Good afternoon.
Welcome, everybody.
Good morning from the UK.
Good morning, David Krukol. I hope you're there.
Yes, I'm here.
We would like to see you also.
I'm trying to get my camera to work.
Okay.
I see we are now streaming live into YouTube, so I better be careful what I say.
So, Vinod, can we start?
Yes, sir. A minute, I think. We have Paula already.
We have 1 minute. One minute to go.
Yeah. We have David Krukol as well. It's good to see him. Yeah. And of course, a number of faculty members also. That's nice. We have Dr. Ramesh Sharma. Where is he? Ah, there he is. Sir, hi. Yeah. He is one of our future speakers here. Like every speaker here, this is a niche topic. Something to do with serious games and Second Life and all that. Sometimes the topics are so diverse, it's very difficult to understand at first glance, which is why we would like them to talk to us and tell us this is the way we do it. Oh, Toshiko is here. Good afternoon. Oh, good morning. No, they are already evening.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Toshiko, welcome. We have Paula, David Krukol with us. And I hope Claudia joins us. I just texted her some time back. And maybe I think we can start. Dr. Dubey?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Rani, please.
Okay, sir. Hello, a very good afternoon to everyone. On behalf of Sri Vaishnav Vidyapeeth Vishwavidyalaya, I, Rani Singh, welcome you all in today's webinar, which is on 360-degree immersive technologies for medical simulation, digital therapeutics, and clinical education and training, organized by Sri Vaishnav Vidyapeeth Vishwavidyalaya and International Simulation and Gaming Association, ISAGA. It's a pleasure to inform that today we have with us Mr. David Wortley, Vice President of International Society of Digital Medicine and founder and CEO of 360 Immersive Experiences. Before beginning the webinar, I would like to invite Conference Chairperson ISAGA 2021 and Honorable Vice Chancellor of Sri Vaishnav Vidyapeeth Vishwavidyalaya, Dr. Upinder Dhar, for welcome address. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon from India to all the guests who have joined us in this webinar. At the outset, I would like to welcome Dr. Wortley, our resource person for the webinar today. As all of us know, that last year ISAGA 2020 could not be held because of the pandemic. Therefore, we'll be hosting it this year, so ISAGA 2021 in the month of September. And as it appears that pandemic has a long way to go, and this year we may have to do it online only. So it will be virtual conference of ISAGA. And I'm sure that most of the members, in fact, all the members can easily join, because for joining virtually, there should not be any problem. But to keep everybody informed and connected and active, we last year decided that why not to have a series of webinars inviting various members of ISAGA and other experts who are specializing in gaming and simulation. Why not invite them also for having these, for conducting these webinars? Now I think this is the 16th webinar that we are organizing today. And all the webinars so far have been very well received and highly appreciated by all. And more important is participation. So we had a lot of questions and answers after the presentation of the webinar. So I'm sure that this time also we are having a well-known expert, Dr. David Wortley, with us, and he will be sharing his experiences with all of us, and we'll be richer in our understanding, and our perspective will change about simulation and gaming by the end of this webinar. So once again, welcome Dr. David Wortley to this webinar, and also welcome all members of ISAGA who have joined us. I can see Paula, I can see David and others. Welcome, and let us learn from Dr. David Wortley today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I am pleased to welcome and introduce today's speaker of the webinar, Mr. David Wortley. Mr. David Wortley is a Vice President of the International Society of Digital Medicine, CEO, and founder of 360 Immersive Experiences, and former founder director of the Serious Games Institute. His involvement in the use of serious game and simulation for education and training is over 40 years. He has pioneered the use of digital communication technologies and helped to establish serious games and simulation initiatives in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Korea, and China. As the founding director of Serious Game Institute, he led the establishment of Serious Game Institute as an international center of excellence and global thought leader in both serious games and immersive environments, launching the Serious Game Institute in 2007 with a hybrid conference accessible both physically and virtually. Today, David has over 23,000 360-degree images on Google Street View, with over 100 million views of these images. Now, I request David Wortley to enlighten us with his knowledge. A request for the audience, if you have any question during the presentation, please type them in the chat box or QA session. I will bring them up after the presentation, and we will also have questions at the end. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, those kind words. It's a great privilege and a pleasure for me to be speaking to you today from the United Kingdom. My only regret is that the circumstances that we find ourselves in with a coronavirus, that I'm not able to meet you in person, because I have very many happy memories of ISAGA and TISIM conferences. So I'm not going to waste any more time with introductions. I'm going to start sharing my slideshow and take you through the presentation. Please type in any questions that you have throughout the presentation. I'm going to try and go through it quite quickly because I have 49 slides and I want to allow plenty of time for questions and answers. But it would be remiss of me to start the presentation without paying my tribute to Songshree Saranastapon, founder of TISIM, along with David Crookall. She has been a wonderful friend and an inspiration in the area of simulation and games, and she will be very sadly missed. This is a treasured picture that I have when Songshree came to visit the UK a couple of years ago, and we went to Windsor Castle, which is where the Queen of the United Kingdom lives. So we did a little selfie there. So that's a precious memory. Rest in peace, Ajahn Songshree. So from this presentation, what I would like to deliver is to give you an understanding of what 360-degree technologies are, the kind of digital technologies are involved in delivering immersive experiences, an example of some of the huge range of potential applications that these technologies have for medicine and healthcare. But I want to focus a lot on gamified immersive learning applications, particularly as they're applied to health and well-being. Because if there is a sector which needs to use technology and all the help that we can provide, it's in health and well-being. Even after coronavirus is over, I suspect we will still have a legacy of mental and physical health problems that we will need to address. And those experts within ISAGA and TISIM have a lot to be able to offer to this sector. I want to touch on also how gamified immersive learning applications can be developed today. And finally, how to access more information. So looking at 360-degree technologies, this is not something that's new. I shown this picture of a screen that was shot, a picture taken in the 360-degree cinema at the Epcot theme park. And that was back in the 1980s. And you could go into this cinema and the screen was all around you, and you could visit different countries, and you could look all around as you would do in a normal environment. It was restricted to the height and depth of the screen that you see there. So it's not truly 360-degree immersive. It was 360-degree in the round. But to make this kind of video required a huge amount of technical equipment and a lot of post filming editing to be able to create this multi-screen experience. But today, and we're talking maybe 20 or 30 years, over this time, we've gone from a situation where these kind of experiences could only have been developed by professionals with expensive equipment. The same experiences today can be created by consumers using affordable cameras. And I've shown some of the examples of cameras that you can use to create 360-degree images and even 360-degree video to a standard which would be considerably higher than what you could have seen in the Epcot cinema picture that I've shown you. So I've shown you some examples on the screen there of the kinds of technologies that I've been using for a few years now. And this is an example of a still screenshot from ISAGA 2018. And you can see me in the bottom left-hand corner. I'm actually holding the camera. Vinod is sat next to me, if you can see him. But this is exact what you get on the camera. So the camera creates a file, which if you view it on a normal screen, looks exactly like this. So what I've done on the next slide is to show you how that can be created into a 360-degree immersive experience on a web browser or in a video. And here it's a different picture. And what you can see is Professor David Crookall taking a picture of the presenters. Ajahn Songshree is making a presentation in the room. And as you can see, looking around the room, we can see probably some familiar faces. You may recognize some of them. I can recognize Ploy and Pim sat in the audience, and a number of different people that I've met over the years, and I'm privileged to call my friends. And there is Vinod coming into view now, concentrating and applauding. So thank you, Vinod. So that's an example of, this is actually a still 360-degree photograph, which I've just turned into a video so that you can see that the image is captured all the way around, and it gives you the same kind of experience as you would have got in the Epcot cinema all those years ago. So as well as being able to take photographs and videos, you also need to be able to display them. And again, the consumerization of technology has brought out a lot of different virtual reality headsets. And even if you look at Google Cardboard, you can combine your smartphone with a cardboard device that allows you to have a similar kind of 360-degree experiences. So what I'm trying to say is virtual reality experiences are now much more affordable. And of course, it's not just virtual reality, it's augmented and mixed reality. And the technologies are available today that only a few years ago would have been regarded as science fiction, but they are now practical and usable in a variety of different environments. So I've tried to illustrate this process of digital consumerization over the last 30 years in this graph. And this applies not just to healthcare, but it applies to almost any professional sector you can think of. Because for most of my life, most of the technologies that have been developed for a specific purpose. They've been developed in the medical sector, things like MRI scanners, X-ray machines, devices to measure your health. These have been developed especially for the professionals in those sectors. And these technologies in the past have been proprietary. They haven't had any intelligence built into them. They've been unconnected, and they've been expensive. So over this 30-year period, we've now moved from those proprietary, dumb, unconnected, and expensive devices to very smart, connect, and expensive device. Become so, and a smartphone is used for a multitude of different purposes, including today many medical purposes. So we've had this transition, which is fundamental and earth-shaking, from development of technologies for and by professionals into technology developed for and by consumers. And so these mustn't happen in isolation. It's not one technology that's being developed that's been a big game changer. This is only happening because a series of different technologies are maturing and combining at the same time. And these include things like processing power, memory storage, sensor technologies built into your phone and in the Internet of Things, video capture, video and order capture and output technologies, miniaturization, wireless technologies, mobile device technologies, battery technologies, and today we also have haptic technologies. And these need to kind of mature at the same time or come together to be commercially viable. It's these driving of all of these technologies to come together, which makes things possible. I'm moving now on to medical education and training. And I'm going to play you a little video, which is a promotional video from a company called Medical Realities, who specialize in the use of virtual reality for training all kind of professionals, from surgeons to nurses to doctors in medical practice. So if I just play this now. And that company actually has a professional who comes from the television industry and artificial intelligence with one of the leading surgeons in the UK, specializing in cancer surgery. And the two combine together to create solutions, not only that train people in a standalone basis using virtual reality headsets, but they also do live streaming of operations. And the very first operation that they did, which was live streams in virtual reality, it had 30,000 people viewing that operation. So if you think about that, instead of watching a professional surgeon perform an operation limited just to the physical space within a teaching hospital, for example, people all around the world were able to experience the sensation of being in the operating theatre with Dr. Shafi Ahmed, who performed that operation. This is another example, and Vinod will probably recognize my partner Jackie, who is at this console, and she is using a gamified or simulated laparoscopic surgery operation. So what she's trying to do is to remove a gallstone, and she's using the same tools that a surgeon would use. And this is a gamified environment. In other words, when you're, if you like, playing this game, you can actually feel what a surgeon would feel doing the operation, and your skill is being measured. How long you take to do the surgery, how much damage that you do, and so on, is evaluated in a serious game. And one of the interesting things from my point of view is that, as Vinod will know, my partner Jackie is a technology Luddite. She really doesn't like computers. She doesn't play computer games. And yet she was able to remove this gallstone in a far better and more efficient way than I could. And in fact, many trainee surgeons would have struggled to have achieved those results. So that has some implications for how we train people in surgery. And you could maybe pose the provocative question, is that if you're going to hospital for a laparoscopic surgical operation, are you better to be done by a very skilled 15-year-old gamer or a surgeon who maybe has shaky hands, a little bit old, and so on? But today, fortunately, we have this not only these surgeries to train people, but we also have robotic surgery, which brings together both the skills of the surgeon and also the value of technology. I just want to talk about gamified immersive learning, and then touch on to use that as an entrance into how you can use gamified immersive learning to make an impact on personal health management. Well, I know I'm teaching grandma to suck eggs, as we say in the UK. You will all know what gamification is, but maybe you don't have the same perspective as I do, because I believe every human activity, every single human activity can be viewed as a game. And I believe that gamification is something that's embedded in our DNA. It's what makes us a living creature. So it's something that's not only a skill that can be developed and is born into humans, it's also something that animals use. So I've shown a picture of a dog with a bowl, and anybody who's owned a pet knows how pets can control their owners. And they develop a strategy which essentially is a gamification strategy. They reward their, if you like, their owner with wagging tails and the way that they look at their owner lovingly. And so I think that gamification is something which is born into us, and I think ironically it's sort of fade over time. So I try to create this gamification lens concept, which is a view of all human activities, which essentially says that in any human activity, whether you regard it as a game or not, in any human activity, you will have different players and different roles involved. And at the bottom, I call the bottom level is the hermit. And that's somebody who has absolutely no interest in the activity you're talking about. Then you have the spectator above that. They are people who have an interest and an awareness and perhaps some knowledge. And then above that, you have a person like what I describe as a fan. And in the case of football, these are people who devote time and money and emotion into whatever activity they're talking about. And for those people who are not good enough to be or not old enough or too old to be players. Your next level up is a player. And these are people who are motivated actually to influence outcomes. So they develop skills, they're motivated, and they try to influence outcome and achieve goals. And at the top level, I call what I call games masters. And these are people who are strategists, tacticians, motivators, and coaches. So as you go up the pyramid, each of these roles has a growing influence and ability to achieve goals. So looking at healthcare, one of the biggest problems that we have in health is lifestyle related conditions. And lifestyle related conditions are essentially down to our behaviors. And it's one of the biggest challenges because as human beings, we enjoy a lot of things that are not good for us. We might like a glass of wine, we might like eating, sometimes eat too much. And a lot of the things that exist in our lifestyles today are not necessarily good. So how do we use games to influence behaviors? Well, I'm talking generally now about games, and all games have a start point, a goal, and an end point. And the end point is an objective, and the outcome of the game is a result or an outcome. And you could describe it as also as a destination. But in between that start point and the destination, the objective or the outcome, you've got what I've called the game journey. And game journeys typically include all of these components. There has to be a challenge, otherwise the game is not worth it. There has to be uncertainty of outcome. There has to be some motivation in the player to play it. It has to be, whenever you play, it's essentially the same, but the outcome could be different. And this is what you see with cards and with golf. There has to be choice on the player has to feel that they are influencing the outcome. And in order to make any sense, you need some form of measurement and feedback. So games can be addictive, but not to everybody. All games develop skills and all games influence behaviors. And the best games are games which you can never completely master. So when you look at translating this concept into healthcare, so you have a start point, you have a destination, an out point. The start point is where you are now. And this is where I was in May 2013. And you can see this fat chap sat on a chair on the left-hand side of your screen. Well, that was me in May 2013. And this was when I was in a stage production. And one of my friends, in inverted commas, said to me after the performance, "Oh, that was very good, David. Where did you get your stomach padding from?" And I wasn't wearing any stomach padding. And somebody else said to me, "David, you're fat. I'm worried about you." And this combination of circumstances led me to think that maybe I ought to do something about it. So I ought to go from where my starting point to where I can finish up and my destination. And my destination, my desired destination, was to have a loss of weight and to feel physically a lot better and improve my health outcomes. So my journey, you can regard it as a gamification prescription. This is what I gave myself to gamify my own health there. I gave myself a challenge, which included 10,000 steps a day. I had no idea what the outcome was going to be. So, I was prepared to take the risk that I might fall flat on my face and still finish up the same after I tried these things. I was motivated by the things that people were telling me about my appearance and my health. Every day was the same, but I tried to make it different. And I had choice in what I ate when I went for walks. And hopefully I could influence my outcome, but critically, I had the tools to be able to measure my progress and get that feedback. And all of that was provided by a wearable device. And I still use wearable devices today. I'm holding up my Fitbit. My Fitbit is what I use today. What I used in those days was called the Jawbone Up, but essentially it measured the same thing, my steps and my sleep, and I could record how much I ate, and it would give me my nutritional content of that. So my argument is great journeys lead to unexpected destinations, and I use this combination of gamification and a wearable tech that might work me putting a spoon of honey in my mouth. Well, it's two things really. If you remember the film Mary Poppins, there was a song that said a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. And Mary Poppins used games to get the kids to change their behaviors. But also, you find with children who are not willing to eat, you can play a game with them. You say, my mouth is a tunnel and this is a train. Chew, 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 chew. And so gamification is powerful. And this is the kind of measurement and feedback that I had in those days: sleep quality, steps, my food score, and a dashboard that showed me how I was getting on, my blood pressure, my weight, a whole load of other parameters that were used. And over the years, I've used a variety of these different tools and technologies, and they've had demonstrable results. So this is how I've appeared since I was 50 years old to May 2013. As you can see, I've been carrying a bit of weight for a good few years. But the point is that substantial improvements in physical and mental health are achievable. And to prove that, here's a before and after picture. This was taken in Malaysia with the same person in the picture. In 2013, I looked that before I started on my journey. And 2 years later, I was a changed man and felt a lot better for the process. And again, I'm stood beside the same person. So different technologies provide this measurement and feedback. And all of these technologies are increasingly consumerized and embedded into wearable devices and now a smartphone. So these were my learning outcomes from that gamified journey that I took. 10,000 steps is a figure that's plucked out of the air. It's not prescriptive, but it gave me a target which I could achieve. That was a key thing, is that I was able and am able still to walk 5 miles every day. And every day I walk 5 miles, and I've virtually missed probably less than 0.1% of days over the last 7 years that I've been doing that. So every single day I've seen the benefits to my physical and mental health there. And now at the age of 71, I still have the same zest for life as I had in my 40s, and the same passion to do a lot with my life. Diet is more important than exercise. Diabetes, as I was pre-diabetic, can be prevented and can even be reversed through the use of this kind of strategy. I did learn that protein prevents muscle loss. I learned the hard way because in my early diet, I concentrated on calories, not so much on nutrition. And although I lost a lot of weight, I lost a lot of muscle mass in my legs and the rest of my body. So I suddenly became a lot lighter but flabby, where I didn't want to be flabby. And this resulted in me getting a hernia because protein is very important for maintaining your muscle. And so I now make sure my diet has plenty of protein, drink lots of water, 2 liters a day, and make sure you get a lot of sleep, and ideally have your last meal at least 3 hours before you go to bed. And with all of these gamification strategies, it's important to recognize not only is every individual different, so one strategy might not work for everybody, but even with the same person like myself, I was able to do all these things when I was living on my own. As soon as I started living with Jackie, it became a lot harder because we both like a glass of wine, we both like food, and consequently we I put a lot of the weight back on and had to get it off again, which I've done over the last few years. So the recipe for effective gamification in this, these are all of the components that I said, and it's a virtuous circle. The technologies, gamification, influence behaviors, and they also drive the development of new technologies, and it becomes a virtuous circle. So the healthcare gamification lens might look like this, and you can ask yourself who or what influences your lifestyle behaviors and your personal health management. So you've got people who really will never show any interest in personal health care. I call them hermits. People who might read the papers and think, oh, I should do something about that, and so on as you go up the pyramid. So when it comes to being able to make a difference to your personal health management, whether you are in a clinical pathway yourself, you're trying to cure yourself of a problem, compliance is a big issue, particularly in today's coronavirus situation where people are at home, and so they don't have face-to-face contact with their people who are looking after their health conditions. So the idea is that you use gamification to take people on a journey from ignorance and apathy through support towards taking control and responsibility for their own personal health care. And then you move from non-compliance to good health practices to proactive compliance. And gamification, I believe, has a huge role to play in this in the future. So I'm going to skip through this very quickly because this is another concept, and this is basically trying to get over the fact that there is a gamification cycle which is highly personalized, and it begins with a challenge. And in my case, my challenge was to lose weight and feel better. I responded to that challenge, but I wouldn't have been able to do anything if I couldn't measure the results of my activities, provide feedback, which in turn fed back into a new challenge. So this is how it works in the medical profession. Go on a medical challenge. What can I do about it? What can I measure? And how am I doing? And that then leads into a virtuous circle. So these are what I regard as generally gamification elements. You'll find all of these elements to a lesser or greater extent in all games. So I won't touch on it. But as well as these elements, you've also got influencers. So you can incorporate all of these elements in a very skilled way within a game, but there are other things which aren't part of the game that will influence your behavior and the outcomes of that game. So every individual responds to different influences in making decisions or choices. I've called them my A list. And so one of these, as an example, is authority. Who are you going to listen to? Is it a medical professional? Is it a politician? Is it one of your neighbors who tells you that vaccines are bad for you? But if that person has got authority in your mind, they are going to influence whether or not you play the game or take these activities. So position of authority is important, and today authority in a way is being completely eroded and transformed to what we're used to. So when I was growing up, it was teachers, the police force, it was my parents. They were the voices of authority. But for many young people today, the voices of authority are what you call social media influencers. These are people who may have absolutely no knowledge of a particular subject, but thousands and even millions of people follow them and listen to what they've got to say, and they're regarded as an authority. So it's important to recognize who the influencers are. Here's another one. It's called Adjacency, a peer influencer. So in India, you almost certainly may have personal knowledge of people who have had problems with coronavirus. And as a result of that, you'll take more notice of what their condition is. It's more believable and more real to you. And similarly, if you have a friend who does Zumba classes or exercise classes, that's what I call adjacency. It's somebody who is similar to you that you identify with, that you will then will form an influence on your behavior. So looking at technology, gamification, and compliance, I've identified the key technologies previously: wearables, IoT, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, big data, smartphones, virtual reality, 5G. All of these technologies are enabling. They go in to enable the gamification elements so they can be used to create challenges, uncertainty. All of these things can be enabled by those technologies, but you have these compliance barriers which you also have to overcome, whether that's denial, it doesn't exist, whether that's a level of cost, whether it's you're setting up challenges which are too difficult, whether there are side effects which are you don't like, whether you trust the person or the advisor or the regime that you're going to go through, whether you're generally apathetic about it, and whether or whether you've had a bad experience. So since 2013, when I embarked on this routine, these are the things that we've seen doing that team. The wearable devices like Fitbit are going from purely consumer items to clinical grade items. Smartphone applications are more sophisticated in the healthcare sector, and can act as a personal coach in certain circumstances. Artificial intelligence is more embedded into devices. 3G wireless are now improved to 4G, and in the UK, 5G is being rolled out. And in fact, where I work in my office, I'm in the house at the moment, but in my office, I get a far better connection to the internet with 4G mobile signal than I can with my wired broadband. And what we're seeing also are the emergence of tech-enabled ecosystem. These are technologies and people who working in adjacent spaces that come together to create a win-win technology-enabled ecosystem. Lifestyle changes will arise from relationship not only with other individuals, but also with the technology increasingly. And pandemics, lockdowns, and social distancing have acted as a big digital accelerator on digital healthcare, digital medicine, and digital therapeutics. So there are a variety of different case studies that I've been involved in that I could talk in more detail if you ask me questions about any specific type of area that you're interested in, because I'm conscious that we are close to the time. So the point is that gamification plus immersion equals effective learning. All games have learning outcomes and are inherently immersive, but how can technology enable gamification and immersive? Well, looking at technology over the years, games and technology have a combination of games and technology have always been able to engage us, whether it's going back to the Space Invaders of the 1970s, the arcade games, America's Army, which was the very first, what regarded as first serious game, which was used to simulate a wartime situation to recruit staff. We have one of the first evaluated serious games for health, which was developed by a company called TrueSim, and it trained paramedics how to deal with the emergency situations from an exploded bomb in a city center, something that you have to simulate. You wouldn't want to do it in real life. To my own experience of gamification with Guitar Hero, and the use of the cave environment to give me a greater sense of immersion, and different games that have been developed over the years using immersive environments as a tool to help engage people, but achieve specific learning and behavioral outcomes. Well, I do have an immersive learning application I've only got 2 or 3 slides after this, so if it's okay with you, what I would like to do is to just share very quickly that example. And it's something that I developed for a conference in the UK, and it's called the Coronavirus Quiz. And the idea is that you take this challenge to test your knowledge of how to tackle coronavirus and similarly educate yourself in a gamified environment. So when I click to start the game, it begins by giving you the rules. The idea is you've got to find hand sanitizers, you've got to find coronavirus information hotspots, you've got to find protective masks, and you also, if you're getting sponsorship, need to find and click sponsor logos. So this, for football supporters, is Chelsea Football Club. And it was chosen as the first environment because this happened to be where the giant healthcare event was located. And so I found a face mask, which I click on it. It will reward me by telling me I'm excellent to find the safe mask, and it just tells me that they're not 100% effective in preventing coronavirus. Then I have a hand sanitizer, and as I go round, I can find other clues and challenges. Here's an information button. Did you know you cannot catch coronavirus from your pet? Now I've got to find a face mask. I've already done that. And I've now got to find and destroy coronavirus. So I found this one here. Got to answer the question correctly. If I get the answer wrong, I'll be teleported to a mystery location. I've got to find my way back. Is COVID-19 the official name for coronavirus? If I answer it, I'm rewarded. It takes me on the next part of my journey, which happens to be in a hotel bedroom in Kuala Lumpur. And so this is a game which takes you all the way around the world on a journey, answering questions, learning more about coronavirus with some rewards at the end of that journey. So I won't carry on with that anymore because I want to allow time for questions. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint slideshow now and just finish off with my slide. So these are the components that I use to create that immersive game. A 360-degree camera. I used a drone for some of the aerial shots, and I created the experience and the quiz using a piece of software called 3D Vista Virtual Tour. And if you added up the cost of all of these devices that I used to create all of this, excluding a PC or a laptop, you're talking about something around £2,000 to be able to create the content and develop the experience. So this is a list of just some of the costs involved in doing it, but they are affordable for small businesses, and a lot of and they're usable by non-IT experts. So a modest outlay, anyone can create and publish professional gamified immersive learning experiences. So finally, before my last slide, looking to the future, I think one of the biggest developments is the integration of biofeedback into gamified health applications. So measuring your vital signs and using that as part of the measurement and feedback that you can incorporate into the games and simulations that you're doing. So thank you very much for listening to me. I would now like to invite any questions that you might have.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for such an erudite session. I hope participants must got some benefit from the session in the tough time of the pandemic. Okay, now it's the time for question answer round. I request panelist members to ask question if they have any doubt regarding the topic.
I've stunned everybody into silence.
Yes, sir.
I,
Yes, Vinod, sir.
Okay.
I think there are some very interesting developments, and I think we are about to see a revolution in digital medicine or digital therapeutics. So I can just give you some examples of how technology has the potential to transform healthcare and address some of the problems that we are seeing today and we will see in the future. And probably one of the most relevant examples that I can quote is the use of virtual reality for digital therapeutics. Um, so there are quite a number, particularly in the USA, where they have quite stringent rules on what devices get approval to be regarded as medical devices. We are now seeing virtual reality headsets and the applications being accredited by the Federal Drugs Agency as medical devices. And they're being used, just some examples that of applications that I've used. One of the, I think, most important and popular is to do with mental health and stress management. People can put on a virtual reality headset and they are taken to a relaxing, immersive environment. Now, that could be a forest, it could be a mountaintop, it could be a simulated, relaxing space age environment designed to soothe your mind. And so there are a number of companies who are creating game-like environments that allow you to basically take control over your mental health. They teach you how to, for mindfulness, they teach you how to relax yourself, and they use biofeedback as a way of doing that. So if you learn to relax, what happens is the virtual environment that you're in, both the sound and the video aspects of it, calm with you. And if you start to get agitated, the environment responds to you. So you teach yourself, you teach your mind mindfulness and relaxation. Another example is of one which combines a game, both as a tool for trying to manage dementia, but also as a tool for detecting dementia. And it's very much a game environment. In fact, there are two games I will tell you about. The first game is in an immersive environment, which is like a fun fair or a theme park. And what you see in front of you is a screen with 9 colored balls in a matrix. And one of these balls will change color. And you have a boxing glove. So you see yourself with a boxing glove. And so if a red ball comes up and you have a red boxing glove, you have to hit the red ball. If it's a green ball and you hit it with a red glove, you get marked down. And so these colored balls come up at different speeds and different colors, and your gloves change color, and you have to react to the change color and hit the right ball. And what this game does is measure your reaction time, and it is a way of helping you to develop mental skills, reaction time, which is one of the signs of dementia, but it also, over a period of time, will detect whether you have signs of dementia. And a similar example is based on a carousel in an airport arrival lounge. So you see yourself in the airport arrival lounge, and you begin the game or the test by being shown some things in your luggage. So it might be a red suitcase, it might be a baseball cap, it might be another object. and you can see these for 10 seconds, say, and you can change all of these parameters to make it easier or more difficult. So you see these objects for a short time and you have to remember them. So you then look at the carousel and a whole range of luggage comes off the carousel. And as soon as you see one of your pieces of luggage, like you would do in an airport arrival lounge, you have to touch the object on the carousel. And so this is a way of testing your short-term memory retention and a way of helping you develop that short-term memory retention and help you to keep neuroplasticity, as it's called. But it's also a way of detecting early stage dementia. So they're just a couple of examples of immersive environments and games that are being used for not only digital therapeutics, but also diagnostics. How can we use 360-degree technology to tell a story, say Cinderella? Well, I guess you can make your own story up. It's a question of imagination. So you are in any way only really restricted by your imagination. The children you tell the story to will have the imagination for you. So what you might do is to take some photographs, 360-degree photographs of familiar places, and you use that to create your own version of a story, whether it's Cinderella or some other one. And so you can incorporate things like a treasure hunt within this. You have hidden objects that you have to find, and you can build these into the story. And what the child or the person you're telling this story to has to interact with the environment that you have created. And so the story will have a different, maybe have a different outcome each time. And in fact, one of the people, somebody that I know, has done something based around storytelling. It's not a treasure hunt. What it is a story where you can determine the outcome. And the video that I have seen, if you could imagine it, it's a immersive experience, and it's called The Exorcist. And it's a story where you see yourself driving, and it's based on real video. You see yourself driving down the street because you've been contacted by a friend who's worried about his girlfriend who's starting to behave strangely. So you're in the car, you see him standing outside the house, you get out of the car, and he said, "Oh, you must help me. You're the only person who can save me. My girlfriend's inside. She won't let me in. What am I going to do?" And so at this point, the door swings open, and it's like a horror film. And you go inside, and it's all dark. And as soon as you've gone inside, the door slams. And you look around, and you see this woman there. And she talks to you in a spooky voice saying, "I hope you bought your box of tricks. I'm going to challenge you." And so you go into the room, and your job was trying to get rid of the demon from inside this person's mind. And so you are wearing a headset which measures your brain activity, and it measures whether you're concentrating or whether you're relaxed. And so if you're concentrating and relaxed, you will get rid of the demon, and the story will branch out to a successful outcome. If you have stress, if you're not relaxed, you might get rid of the demon. This is what I did. I got rid of the demon. And then I thought everything's great. The woman was smiling and back to normal again. And then the demon went into my friend. And it described me, the end of the game was, I'm an amateur exorcist. I need to practice. So this was using branching technology. So you make a decision, you have an outcome, and it goes to a different part of the video in the same way as the game that I showed you. That if you made a wrong answer, you would find yourself in a different place and you need to get back to that. So it can be built into a story. And the story that I told in that game that I illustrated was basically, you are in Chelsea in London, your home is in Singapore, you can only get back if you answer all of the questions correctly. And so there's an incentive to learn there. It takes you through different paths.
Jacob, please ask your question.
Hi, thank you, David. I'm Jaga here
About
from Malaysia. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, I am Jaga from Malaysia. So thank you very much for all the photos of Malaysia. All right. So I'd like to ask a question about the 3D Vista. Could that be used as an assessment tool? I mean, would you get feedback on who answered what and how many they got right and wrong? Or is that just an experiential thing that somebody goes through?
No, absolutely not. It is an assessment tool, and in fact, it can be. It has embedded SCORM compliance, so you can capture all of the actions and the results within the experience. So it's multi-purpose. Originally, it was designed, or primary application was for estate agents to be able to show people around properties without them having to visit physically. Because the other thing is that as well as being a standalone game where you can evaluate the performance of the player and provide them feedback, not only provide them feedback, but you get a complete record of how they played the game, where they went wrong, etc. That's all recorded within the environment. Yeah, so yes, it's a very powerful tool which is SCORM compliant, and it can be published to a website. If it's used on a website, you can also use it so that you can have a remote tutor taking a player through the game. So I could be here in the UK, I could take you to the web page, and I could give you control of the game. I could watch you play, and I could help you and advise you, just like pretty much like a Zoom webinar, except that you're giving control of the person to play the game.
Professor Paula, your question.
I would like to understand, and thank you for your contribution, quite interesting. By the way, we can discuss about the hours, what is serious, because for me, serious is a necessary attribute of game. Game is serious by nature. Yes. But anyhow, there is one thing that is quite interesting in your let's say in your speech, that is make me thinking. We are publishing a research using research made by our colleagues on artificial intelligence and psychologists in Italy on the reaction of during the pandemic, and let's say right now, so it's run for till last March. And there is an interesting fact. Among the targets, the one that is reacting in a bad way, let's call it not good, are the people that is between what we call millennials. I mean, people that is using those kind of technologies. Yeah. And this is quite interesting how these people that is, in your opinion, these people that during pandemic is affected by technologies in the sense that they have a sort of tiredness. They are not, you know, they are overwhelmed by these kind of instruments. How they can use artificial intelligence or this kind of game, let's say, to learn, to overcome, to heal them, even to, you know, to heal in the sense of well-being, let's say, well-being, environmentally well-being. So in your opinion, how can this immersive technology help this situation? It seems that help us that we are old rather than the
yes, I think, yes, I think that's an interesting. I think the millennials are really, in a way, are sort of primary users of these kinds of technology, and so it's almost a second nature. The problems that we game is increasingly there is evidence
Some problem with the connectivity.
Yes, sir.
Is David there? We can't see him also.
It appears that he is not connected.
Not connected, I think.
No.
Ah, yeah, he has come back.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm not sure what happened then, but my connection, my connection went. No, yes, I think the millennials are particularly affected, and I think one of the issues that's come to light in research, not just to do with the pandemic, but over a period of time, is that young people feel that they have what's called an external locus of control, which means that they feel that their lives are effectively predetermined. That nothing that they can do will affect an outcome, and I think technology has played a part in making that happen. And in fact, in many ways, because technology does so much for us, and artificial intelligence is making decisions for us, you can understand how this phenomena arises. And that may be why older people who were born, like myself, a baby boomer, born into a world where we had to basically make our own lives. You know, I have an internal locus of control. I firmly believe, despite all the evidence, that I can make a difference. And this is what motivates me. And I think this is a challenge that the younger generations particularly face. The only way that I think games can play an important part in helping to address that, because games and gamification create environments where having control over an outcome is a key element of the game. All games have to be interesting and exciting. Games have to have this component of being able to affect an outcome or a result. And where AI comes into that is, like I said, with the biofeedback example, is that the biofeedback provides the measurement that shows you how you are doing. Like in any game, it's like seeing the result on a scoreboard, or it's like seeing in any game, you need to be able to see how you're doing to be able to make decisions about the future. So this is where I think games could be extremely important coming out of the COVID situation. And what kind of games that you would be able to use? I suspect they could be a virtual reality environment, games linked to a device like the Muse or a headset that measures your brainwave activity, or some other biofeedback devices that allows the young person to develop that sense of control and sense of well-being that comes from being able to affect the outcomes. How you then translate that into, if you like, real life, I mean, all I can say from my own experience of physical activity and doing the things to manage my own personal health, that in itself gives me a greater sense of well-being and a feeling that I have some influence over my future. I'm not sure whether that answers that, but my best shot.
No, I know that it's difficult. It's not an answer that is so simple to let's say to answer. I mean, it's not a question that is too simple to give an answer. Still, I have some doubts that in the future they will be really affected through the game. I see my students; they are more affected by personal touch right now. They are thirsting for that. Meanwhile, yes, we are thinking that they are living, you know, their world is immersive artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
there is another thing that that we found in our study. I'm an urban planner. I'm not a psychologist, neither scientist, computer scientist, but what we found, another interesting thing, is that population, we were working with population affected 10 years ago by a disaster, by earthquake. Population affected by disaster tends to reveal or to have a better RSA resilience, asset better than the other people that was not affected by disaster. So it seems that the response and the level of resilience is better, and therefore also the use of technology. I mean, the use of these kind of tools.
Yes,
there is something that has to be studied, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised at all that you say that about people affected by disasters and earthquakes, because that's what I would expect. Because if I look at, well, you take examples, but there are many of them in the sporting field. It's quite common for athletes who reach the top of their profession, to people like tennis players, Djokovic and Andy Murray. They are people who've had traumatic experiences in their childhood. And I find this also, and it's very humbling, that people who are born disabled in some way, whether they're blind or they're deaf or whether they've got cystic fibrosis, they often are much more resilient than people who haven't had those experiences. And I think we could talk about this for a long while, but I think one of the problems is that the young people are born into, in the developed world, they're born into, in inverted commas, a relatively comfortable environment where things are on tap, on demand, their phone, all of these things are on demand. So they don't have those challenges in their lives to develop their physical and cognitive resilience. And this is why I think human to human interaction is so important in developing the future. And things like when I look in my own youth, growing up and being in the Scouts, and all the challenges we had going camping, all the adventures we had in those days, that was part of what made me the person I am. And I think lockdown has denied a lot of young people those same kinds of experiences. And technology really doesn't help. Humans need human to human interaction. They need to feel valued. They need to lots of things which are by coronavirus.
And now we take today's last question from David Kukal.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dave, for some wonderful thoughts, challenging thoughts.
Nice to hear from you, David.
Yeah, well, good to hear from you. I am sorry I cannot get my webcam to work. There's a problem with the driver. So there's technology for you. Doesn't always work.
Absolutely, yes. What will we do without it?
But at least we can talk. So I have a challenging question for you. How could you, with your...
Oh, you usually do have a challenging question, David, so go ahead.
Well, I like to tease too. How could you, with your immersive technology and your interactive technology, make the next ISAGA conference more than just a few online webinars?
Well, yes, that is a nice, interesting, challenging question, David. Well, I think the answer to that is that there are, in fact, as a result of coronavirus, some of the other technologies that I'm involved in on the webinar and streaming technology area are going some way towards helping with that. I was involved in a conference that did try to effectively create the virtual experience to mirror the physical experience. So, in other words, you as a delegate, you could go round an exhibition hall and visit stands. You could talk to people on the individual stands in a kind of 360-degree environment, and they weren't able to get it to work for the conference itself, which was a real shame. But so we are at the moment, when you're trying to, if you're looking at ISAGA, your biggest challenge are current limitations of technology as far as your audience is concerned, because not everyone has a good internet connection. Certainly only a minority of people would have virtual reality headsets, and so the enabling technologies required to effectively mirror a physical conference in a virtual world are limited. So you've got to really design almost for the lowest common denominator. What technologies are going to be basically available and accessible by the people that you want to involve within that conference. And I think a lot of it is actually to do with the conference, with the conference content, and with the individuals involved in that. As I'm thinking back now, going back well over 20 years, that I was involved in a project, a friend of mine in the USA, a guy called John Hibbs, did something in the late global that it should be access to. So
David, sir, you're not audible.
Whether you're not connected.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether you're hearing me, but
lost the connection.
It's okay. I can hear you.
David says
I can.
You're audible now, I think.
I can hear you. I see you, Vinod, and
Yeah.
can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. What about others?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Um, I, I think the question is that you have to cut your you have to cut your coat according to your cloth, and so it's the audience and what capabilities they have to participate. If you want to make it an inclusive conference, you have to bear that in mind. But the technologies that allow you to reproduce some of the things that you would expect in a normal conference are improving all the time. So you can have plenary sessions, you can have breakout sessions, and I'd be happy to advise on some of the technologies that allow you to create the most inclusive experience possible. But there isn't a simple answer to your question, David. I'm sorry.
Well, I guess there isn't, yeah.
I can tell you what we did back in 2006. We had a hybrid conference to launch the Serious Games Institute. And this took place both physically at Coventry University and it took place in the Second Life virtual world. So people could go into and they could see video presentations on in a virtual auditorium in Second Life, and they could see the presenters as avatars, and that was going back to 2006, and that could be accessed on a fairly reasonable multimedia laptop over the internet. But that was a hybrid conference, and if the circumstances allow, you may be able to do something like a hybrid conference for iSaga.
Maybe I can add something.
Yeah, sure.
A conference, generally, I think that the first reason why people go to conferences is not to give a paper, it's to meet other people. I mean, the etymology of the word conference means to bring together and to talk together. And I think that all conferences have that element. And I think iSaga is certainly no exception. And I've just been to a very big conference, 16,000 scientists there at the European Geosciences Union. And it was a great success. It was a conference that took place over 2 weeks. They had problems with the networks, but they sorted it out extremely quickly, overnight. And then we had some absolutely tremendous sessions, presentations. But I think that one thing that sort of hit me is that when people start trying to imitate an in-person conference in all its aspects, then we become disappointed. And the sessions in which people invented and had new kinds of combinations of meetings, they was much more successful. And I think that any kind of conference, whether it's online or in person, should provide sessions in which people can meet informally, get to know each other, chat about old times, think about projects together or whatever it is, in addition to the more formal sessions in which presentations are done. And I think that probably, how can I say, more interactive sessions, there's more interaction between the presenter and the audience would certainly be something to think about.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right, and there are virtual conference platforms that do allow you to do that. And I think of a platform called Hopin that was used for the conference you're talking about. If you like, networking areas where people can go and chat and they can go on you can also make some build in some games and simulation into the conference by giving all the delegates a challenge. You know, you've been very good, David, in organizing these games at Tysim conference, which engage delegates in some way. Versions of those where people work in small groups like the ones you organize, as long as you.
Well, it's not my cat.
Yeah, I don't think I would agree that Zoom isn't the right technology for doing events of the type that you've suggested. There is something in the chat here from Dr. Elena to all panelists. Can human mind becomes an end in itself? Well, I think we really have to. We have to avoid that we are so dependent on technology that we lose our humanity. To avoid that at all costs. It's difficult because the consumerizations of technologies are very attractive to all of us, including myself, because technologies allow me to do far more than I could have done even 2 years ago. I'm doing effectively what amounts to television broadcasts every Tuesday in the morning and the afternoon on digital health issues. And I can broadcast this television across the world to Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn simultaneously, and make it also interactive, so people can type in comments and can ask me questions, or my guests, they can ask them questions throughout the whole program, and that is, well, extremely affordable technology. So things are moving at a really rapid pace, but we must try and avoid at all costs that that we retain our humanity, we retain our control over our futures. Otherwise, some of the things that we are seeing with the younger generations for mental problems, that they will, they will just get exaggerated. And I can see a world with a lot more conflict in it if we don't do things properly.
Okay, thank you, Mr. David, sir, for answering all our questions. Already we are running out of time. So due to shortage of time, we have to end this question answer round. Now I request Dr. Vinod Damlekar, sir, founder Mentis, to present word of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Rani. David, your presentation was a standout. You converted the familiar saying, a picture being 1,000 words, is into something, an XYZ, a 360-degree mode, virtually exponential in terms of presentation, in terms of conveying meaning. You were my adjacency. I don't know whether I have the word right. In Thailand, when you showed me that you would do 10,000 steps on your wearable device, and after that I've tried to manage 10,000 once in a while, but 8,000 is what I've been trying to do. So thank you. You are my leader over there. Your pyramidal structure of the hermit, the spectator, player, and the master, etc., was very illuminative in the sense that we got to know various levels of interest in gaming. I think this is the first time I'm seeing that, and it's going to take me a while before I go deep into it and understand something more. You took us on a personal journey of discovery and change from your health about 7-8 years back and to what you are now. I think I've enjoyed the journey, and I too have. Maybe I can hope to change as much as you did. You showed us the power of visual technology, and I hope that with my silly question, how do you tell a tale like Cinderella with visuals? I hope that encourages all of us here to be able to use more visuals in their simulations and games. Thank you very much for a wonderful round. The participation, the questions such as those from Paula and the last over from Kukul was very, very good. It took us along many different directions, and I hope that we can carry this learning further as well. Thanks are due to the organizers of this conference, the fellow members of ISAGA who are here, many other listeners here. Thank you for being so kind and patient enough to listen to a wonderful webinar from David Wortley. David Wortley, you have been a friend of mine, which I have, of course, not shared very much with many, many people here. I hope we can meet sometime soon, you and Jackie Grundon as well. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, before we close,
yes, sir.
I would like to congratulate Toshiko for contributing a chapter in the book Transforming Society and Organizations Through Gamification.
Oh, wonderful.
The book is published by Springer, and very, very well done. Toshiko, can we have a session in future on this, based on this chapter? You have to unmute yourself.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Mute. Unmute.
We are not.
Unmute, please. No, we can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, now it's
clear.
Yeah. So I will do. Thank you very much for your attention.
Vinod will be in touch with you for finalizing the date.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. A request for the audience, there's a feedback link in the chat box. Please fill the feedback form. So thank you, everyone, for joining the webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye. Goodbye from the UK. Bye-bye. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.